For me, coming to an American school in such a liberal part of the country that, where the boys and girls can really just like truly express themselves is I think, such a cool thing. Like they're really being who they want to be, and like it's not an opportunity that we had growing up.
Welcome back to the Post Definitions Podcast with your host, Freddie Lancha, and our guest, Sam.
All right, Freddie, what do you want to talk about, buddy?
Yeah, so we're talking more about how society puts us in boxes and we put ourselves in boxes, and that's playing a big role in our lives. So let's dig into it. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit about just a little bit of what you think the viewers might be interested in and who you are?
So I'm a elementary educator from Australia, who a cousin of Frederick here. But I think that within this topic of the podcast has an interesting perspective of identifying as a male educator through the elementary educator lens, if that makes sense. Like a male perspective on a female dominant industry. I think also being young like differentiates it in terms of in like I wasn't in school that long ago. I'm only 25 now, and so I was teaching first grade just a year ago, and so when I was in first grade was only you think if they were 7 years old. I'm 25. That's do some quick maths. That's 18 years ago, like, which in perspective isn't that long ago, really.
Yeah.
So you think as a 25-year-old trying to teach these 7-year-olds, you think you have this really cool perspective of, I'm this young guy that's trying to teach these young kids and have this new cool twist on it. But really, have you really got this new twist on it that no one's ever thought of before? But you're doing your best, and I mean, I don't know. My class was I could talk a whole podcast about how cool my class was, but I think like in terms of the topic of this, that as a young male educator, is that you are often interpreted as gay, which it like is not the case, but that it's just it is just the assumption almost.
Yeah, super interesting. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's such a feminine, career in general? Like it's I don't perceive it that way, but why do women gravitate towards it, and why are you perceived as more feminine?
I think for particularly for elementary education, it is a female-dominated career choice. Particularly kindergarten is young women gravitate towards that. Like, God knows why. As an educator myself, can't imagine why. It's just exhausting. It is just awful. But like, young women just gravitate towards the career. Like, they just, something about them, just, they love it.
Yeah.
Like a motherly instinct, I think,
Right.
Yeah, I think they just, that motherly instinct in them just makes them want to almost
Yeah, to care for.
Care for. That's an excellent. That's an excellent way to describe it. To care for these young men and women that to bring them up and care for. Yeah.
Yeah. Why do men not feel that fatherly instinct to father children who aren't necessarily their own?
That's such a good point because I think as a male educator, I do feel fatherly, but not to the extent that the female educators feel motherly.
Yeah,
If that
interesting.
makes sense. I feel more. The sense that I get is more big brotherly, a more siblingly reaction to the students that I work with.
Yeah, cool. Do you think that's your age also?
I think, yeah, being a young educator is part to do with that. Yeah, for sure. I think as well, not to like toot my horn or anything like that, but I think I am fairly popular with the kids, like just being young, because they feel like they can relate with me more. And I do put a fair bit of effort into being relating to with them. I always say, this isn't an education podcast or anything, but I always say that my personal education philosophy is Vygotsky over Piaget, which basically just means that I put well-being over learning, so that students need to be healthy and cared for, happy before they can actually learn and be successful at their learning. Because the background that I come from is in an education setting where kids are coming from traumatic backgrounds. So my personal philosophy is that it's like kids need to be actually able to learn before they can actually learn. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So do you try to build up their self-esteem as well to like empower them to think higher of themselves and therefore be able to do greater things? And how do you battle, like I think you were telling me earlier about kids being put in groups, like kind of like saying like, oh, these kids are sort of behind and these ones are ahead, and therefore you give these kids like bigger tasks. I feel like that could play a big role in like how they perceive themselves maybe for their whole lives. Like, oh, I'm one of the dumb ones or I'm one of the smart ones.
Yeah, so like just recently, I think I was telling you about how I work in now as a para educator, and which just basically means that you're not the main teacher, but you're like the teacher's aide type of role. And I think that building up, I mean, no matter what role you're in, it's important to, as an educator, to build up their self-esteem. And from my perspective, what that means is to build a relationship with that child, and then learn what they
Yeah, what they need,
and what they
what will help them to
what they resonate with,
Yeah.
what they most resonate with.
Okay, cool.
I mean, most recently, I think really made a connection with a student that was struggling with their maths work. They just weren't getting it, like, and didn't work well with me even. As a student, they didn't really connect with me. As an educator, they just thought, oh, Mr. Marshall's a bit of a, whatever. Don't really like him.
Something they say in Australia
Yeah,
that you don't want to say on an American podcast.
Oh yes, yes. But and then we got talking about just some shared interest, and something as simple as a shared interest, or something I found really effective in Australia was something as simple as a nickname. I called all of my students in Australia Goose. Oh, you silly goose. Across the whole school, across 100 students. Oh, you silly goose. But they felt special having a nickname. And so then when something comes up, they're feeling really distressed, and they're feeling really like, oh, I can't deal with this. I can't cope with this test, or I can't cope with this social anxiety situation, whatever it is. But then Mr. Marshall comes up and goes, oh, you silly goose, what's up? And then, it eases the situation. It eases the tension. They feel like they've got an in, they've got a connection already.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how you build that connection with all the students, um, and then from there you're able to like, maybe not lead to any of them to feel like I was saying like, I don't know, disadvantaged, dumb or smart or something like this, right? Just because they're put in a certain group,
Yeah.
because you somehow put your personal relationship above like that sort of, I don't know, where they were put in the class. Like your personal relationship is more important, maybe.
Yeah, I
If
think.
that makes sense.
No, I think it does. I mean, absolutely. I think putting into terms, again, like my personal philosophy on it, that like putting, again, like I'll reference the Vygotsky over Piaget, which is then, well-being over education, is like you've got to put their, basically, like, I think if you really, really just put it down to its basics, is you've got to put because they're people, they're little people, no matter what age they are, they're little people. And so you've got to put the person over what is actually happening in whatever education setting you're doing, whether it's elementary or middle school or high school. You've got to actually put that person in terms of what you're learning. And so that means then, being understanding and being, sympathetic towards, okay, what's this child or what's this student got going on with them, to be, actually, let's take into account that, okay, this student doesn't actually just have X, Y, Z going on, but actually they've got X, Y, Z, A, B, C and going on, as opposed to another student that just has X, Y, and Z going on.
Do you think that it's easier for you to kind of create this personal relationship as this young man who's playing this big brother role?
I think in some regards, yes. As a young man in education, I think I do have certain privileges. It is easier for me to find employment. It's not necessarily a good thing, but like, yes, as a male young person, I do have easier employment opportunities. But then I also think it like, as negative as that sounds, I think it is also a positive that the students benefit from it, because it's not a perspective that they often receive in school. It's
Yeah, right.
because it is it is a female dominated career path.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, that diversity, it's like on this podcast, I'm trying to talk to people who have just widely different perspectives. And if I talk to two people who are both, have the same sort of profile of, I mean, you can always dig deeper and find the differences between these two people, but yeah. And I wonder, like, obviously the stereotype is that like young men are having the easiest time in all job markets. But I wonder if there are some job markets, and I'm pretty sure that there are, where women are having an easier time just because they need that diversity. Like, I mean, my dad works in tech, and he says that, like, if a woman makes it to the end of her education, gets like a master's in tech, something like this, she's obviously going to have an easier time getting a job, against a bunch of men just because they want to say like we have some women working here and stuff like this, and that has a positive impact. And so in this area where there's fewer men, it makes sense, and that's awesome that you can bring that perspective.
I think for in terms of career paths, I think there are very few female dominated careers, teachers being one of them. But and then also specifically, you can even then get more specific with, I think, elementary teachers specifically will get female dominated. I would be of the opinion that I think then if you get to high school and even middle school, in Australia we don't have middle school, we just have we call it primary and high school. We don't have a middle. But I think for that middle and high school here in America, I think that like you would definitely see more tipping towards that equilibrium, but very specifically that elementary, that like very female dominated, and then and the same in Australia, that even though you cut out that middle school, you still have that. We just have elementary and high school, but that elementary pool of educators would definitely be female dominated.
Yeah. So not going too deep into like all the reasons why you decided to go into this career path. Can you say a little something about why you feel like you you did pursue this as a man, and why other men might not have been so inclined? Like what attracts you to really commit your life to this?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I know a couple of friends that also males that went into then in Australia high school education. I think for me personally, I got inspired, and funnily enough, my first full-time teaching job was just by chance a first grade teacher. I got chucked into it the third week of school, and then just ended up taking over the class as like, we call it a long-term substitute, and then just ended up taking the class for the rest of the year. But for me, way back when, and I'm so extremely lucky, and I thank myself every day for making this decision that when I was then in first grade, I had a great first grade teacher, and I said, I'm going to be a teacher. So and then I
Was that first grade teacher a man?
It wasn't actually, which is an interesting point even in itself. It was a female teacher. I mean, I can tell you so much about her. Her name was Mrs. Mackenzie. I don't remember. She got married while we were in first grade. I don't remember her name.
So she was Miss to Mrs.
Miss something before that, but she was Mrs. Mackenzie after she got married. So halfway through the year or something, and she just made such a profound impact that, and I even know multiple, not other males again, but multiple female classmates that were in that class that then also became, I think they're also kindergarten, first grade, second grade teachers from that same cohort. That I don't know if they had the same inspiration as me, but also became teachers.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I know one other male that became a teacher, but he is a high school teacher. So it is an interesting dynamic to have a male elementary teacher.
Yeah, I always wanted one.
You never had one at all?
No, not when I was in elementary. In middle school, I did, I think. Yeah, I remember I really wanted to get into the man teachers class in 5th grade, but I didn't make the cut.
I think even for kids, it is such an interesting perspective to have. I was lucky enough to have three. I had for fourth, fifth, and sixth, because again we don't have middle school, so we just go K through sixth as primary or elementary, and then 7 through 12 as high school. So I had for my elementary 4, 5, 6 as male teachers, and it just offers such a different but like really cool perspective, and drastically different, I think, than you would get from a female, even like a female from a very similar background. And again, like even me as someone who from, if a female teacher went to the same college that I did, and went to the same schools that I did, and taught in the same situations, but I think we just offer such different things somehow.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of exactly what like we're trying to get at this podcast. Just like just because you fill all these categorical boxes as another person does not make you the same person, and you guys have unique perspectives and unique personalities and unique lives and all these things that you can't really fit on paper. And of course this gender thing is obviously one of these things you can put on paper, but it goes deeper than that. And it's super crucial to give kids like different role models to teach them this lesson that like anyone can do anything. So and it's like also this like teachers are some of the adults that kids interact with the most. So just to say that there are like women in tech, like kids don't really see that. So I can't imagine that really like impacting girls, just because 50% of people in an office somewhere are women, that's not gonna like affect them. But if you see like some of your math teachers being women, that's what's really gonna change the future, right?
Yeah, like I've tried to, for me personally, I've tried to gravitate towards more older students. I'm now teaching in now American schools, middle school, so 6th through 8th, and it's so fascinating to see these, coming from a first grade perspective, to then now these young men and women that are actually, young. They're young men and women that are forming their opinions and forming their identities to try and figure out, what they want to do and what they want to achieve in their lives. It's inspiring and fascinating to see these, these young women that want to be businesswomen and achieve really highly in like just be entrepreneurs and achieve in this sense of for my generation that's just unheard of, like achieve in this sense of commercial success, or these young men that want to just achieve in terms of I want to be happy instead of commercial success, and I want to just be content in myself as a man, and achieve in that way. So, which is so different than what I grew up with in Australia. So I mean, I think it's fantastic as an educator. I think it's awesome, but also drastically different to what I experienced.
Yeah. Where do you think that comes from? Where is this change coming from?
I think Australia I mean, I've said and have said openly that Australia is not a very PC country, politically correct country, where we're a little bit behind on the trends in terms of that, which is neither good nor bad. It just is. At the same time, it's so interesting it is so interesting to observe because the Australian culture is not geared towards that. It is still changing towards that. It is very much the evolving culture towards the more American PC. Like everyone is who they are, and what I grew up with and what you grew up with, even though we're so similar ages, is so different in Australia and America. And even though we're the same generation, and it's still two Western cultures, it's so different.
Yeah.
As a 25-year-old, I'm actually not that much older than these kids, but you can tangibly feel the difference of, oh no, these kids are, I mean, they say woke or whatever the kids say. They say whatever they say nowadays. I can't keep up with whatever they say.
Yeah.
I feel like every week they've got some new word for it.
Cap.
Cap.
That's what our younger cousins are saying.
Cap and, who knows what else they...
Apparently it means lying.
Lying. But I mean, just young people are amazing. Young people are amazing. I mean, I'm the biggest advocate for, I mean, even the young people here that we have is just incredible.
They are awesome.
It's awesome.
So how are you perceived in Australia versus the US?
I think what would be interesting for you guys to think about is that, so as a, and also something that I get like self-conscious about is that as a young male educator, you get perceived as being gay, homosexual, and it's just, there are young male, homosexual, or gay, whatever you want to call it. Again, Australia, not very PC. I apologise if I'm not using the correct terms and stuff.
I think you're fine.
I'm okay. I'm okay for now.
You're okay on my radar.
Okay. So, you get, I think that is the perception as in that career path that, oh, you're not a female, so you must be this. So then, even parents, like you get parents coming up to, I got a parent coming up to me last year saying, in Australia, yeah, so again, less PC, but a parent coming up to me and saying, oh, so how's your boyfriend? I said, I'm sorry, I don't have a boyfriend.
Crazy.
Yeah, again, Australia, very direct and not PC, but still, just the fact that it is so associated and ingrained in that culture almost of, oh, well, you're not you're not a female, you must be this. And to the point where I got really self-conscious about it, where it offended me almost. And it's such not a negative thing now to be gay anymore. It's so accepted, but to the point where it almost offended me, and that's almost terrible to say.
Yeah.
But to be perceived in another way that you're not presenting offended me almost.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's not if you wonder why are people getting this idea?
Yeah.
And what am I doing, etc. And but yeah, I was speaking recently to some people who were like, yeah, we are so open for gay people. People can do whatever they want. That's what people always say when they're kind of on the edge, Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, yeah, everyone is so open about it. Everyone is gonna accept people for who they are. But would any of you guys rather say you are gay than straight? Isn't there kind of still a negative connotation? They're all and this was a group from all over Europe. Yeah, and they were all like, oh, you know what? To be honest, you're right. It's still. We'd still feel more, just more safe or secure or something. I mean, of course, they weren't gay, or at least they weren't saying they were gay. So, yeah, I mean, people would rather be who they are, but I
Yeah.
still get the feeling that
Like,
Des-
there
despite all
is
this acceptance, it's not quite where it should be.
there is still some connotations towards it, of course, but like the fact that even today, where we are in very newly 2023, that there are connotations is kind of wild.
Yeah,
Like,
I think it's wild.
yeah, that I mean, definitely now in a more open U.S. school, where it's in Marin, California, in the San Francisco Bay Area. I have students that are there's boys wearing makeup and nail polish on and stuff, and there's girls wearing suit pants, and they've got ties on and things in the day. For Australians, it's very unusual because all schools in Australia have uniforms pretty much. For 99% of them, there's a couple of schools like in each state or something that don't have uniforms, but for the most part, every school in Australia has uniforms. So for me, coming to an American school in such a liberal part of the country that where the boys and girls can really just like truly express themselves is I think such a cool thing. Like they're really being who they want to be, and like it's not an opportunity that we had growing up. You wore the boys' uniform, and even to the point where you wore the boys' uniform, that there's a boys' summer uniform and there's a boys' winter uniform. Like as the seasons changed, you put long pants on, or when it got hotter, you put shorts on. And same for the girls, like they put skirts on or they put dresses on, and
Wow.
their what do you call them, skins or whatever.
Yeah, what an experience.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's so fucking awesome to see people not being afraid to be who they are in the schools, in the American schools you're talking about.
cool.
I was in Kadıköy in Istanbul for the last few months, and it's kind of like maybe the most liberal place in Turkey. And there's a high school that's on the water, and I would walk there, and like sometimes the kids would come out and like sit on the grass, like all the way along, maybe on like a Friday afternoon or something after school, and they were doing whatever the fuck they wanted to do, and it was so awesome to see. Like almost all of them were doing some sort of goth stuff, and then
awesome.
they were guys dressing like girls and stuff like this, and it was like, yeah, it was very cool. And
So cool.
yeah,
Yeah, I feel like I feel like Australia is almost a little bit still. It feels bad to say, but like almost still a little bit right wing. They're just conservative, not quite caught up. And so me as a teacher in Australia, like you feel almost, and then me still, even as like a conservative left, I still feel like I'm extreme left in Australia because it's just a little bit more of a conservative place. So then you see those kids, you see that type of thing, and for me, it's just awesome. It's inspiring, and like to be, and even just to be able to have the, not the freedom, but the courage. I think the courage to be like, just I'm gonna do what I want to do, because even now as a 25-year-old, and I still feel fairly confident in myself, and I can still go about my business and do what I want to do. But to be a teenager or a young person and feel like that they just have the absolute freedom to express themselves is such a awesome thing.
yeah, it's such an amazing feeling. I'm like really into this philosopher Kierkegaard, who is always putting this like great value on authenticity and like being your true self. And I thinking like sometimes I'm like, well, I'm thinking like, why am I so drawn to this like characteristic. Like, why am I so drawn to, like, why am I just taking his word for like that's a valuable thing over like something like, I don't know, safety or like religion or something like this. I don't know, like all the other values like family and stuff like this. I'm like so for authenticity, and I realize it's just such an amazing feeling
Yeah.
to like
Like freedom.
to be just a little bit closer to who you like have been, like who you want to be and who you've always kind of known you are, but you just think society's not ready to like accept you, or you just are kind of, you're holding something back because you think it's not right, or and often it's just so ungrounded why that's wrong, you know, like
Yeah.
why it's wrong to be gay, why it's wrong to do whatever you want, you know.
Yeah.
There's nothing, you're not harming anybody, you know.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think that is such a powerful message, not even for young people, for everyone. Like, that you can, that the more you feel unburdened by other people's opinion, then actually the less it matters.
Yeah.
And the more that you just find enjoyment in those things that you love, because oftentimes, I mean, even just this tonight, we were watching. I mean, I hope you don't mind, Freddie. We were watching some cartoons all together.
Yeah.
With Frederick here and my cousins and just the fact that, so for many years with my students, and I've been working in education for 6, almost 7 years, like in various settings, but I would always for lack of a better word, hide that like more nerdy, geeky part of myself that enjoyed those types of things, cartoons and anime and stuff. But very recently, the last year, I discovered that but I can actually connect with those students on that level, and rather than feel ashamed of it and hide it, it's actually something I should embrace. And it's once you embrace it, it's actually a really cool thing to not only for my job, but on a personal level, you feel freed.
Yeah.
And unburdened. You feel lighter almost.
Definitely. And I think there's different levels to this where like, so at certain times I felt like ready to open up to my friends about something and be myself around them. But then it's like, okay, but there's certain rules about when I'm working in the workplace, I shouldn't be myself in this way, this way, this way. I should act like this. And then also maybe in dating, you also think, oh, girls don't really like this, like I should maybe not talk about this, at least at first, or something like this. But I really, really am so much into what you're saying about like, no, you shouldn't act like something at work that you're not. You shouldn't act like something dating that you're not. Because to show people that like you are free and blah blah blah, and as society opens up as well, like maybe people in the past and some people in situations now don't really have the opportunity to be everything they are at work, and so on. But like, yeah, I mean, society in general, in some places in the world, are becoming more open to that, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the workplace can be a tricky environment to navigate. In particular, that I've had. I mean, it's incredibly inappropriate in terms of what is politically correct now. But I've had, again, like going back to that whole theme of male elementary teachers. Oh, they must be gay. I've had co-workers ask me, "Oh, you've got a boyfriend, right?" Like, which is so inappropriate in a workplace. Like, they shouldn't even be concerned about that. But I think that even the fact that like, again, it is even though I had that very fortunate experience of having some male educators as a young man, I think that the fact that it is opening up, and I know male educators that are elementary teachers, and it's becoming more common, is a really cool thing. I think just the world as itself is becoming, fortunately, more open and accepting. It takes time.
Yeah. Do you think of any time in your life where you were able to like get closer to your true self, or get closer to not caring so much, doing something despite being perceived one way without like a role model, like saying like, oh wow, it's actually okay when they do it? It's something interesting to think about, like whether we need those role models.
I think so. Trying to shape yourself with or without a role model, which is like actually such an interesting question. So for me, I'm so passionate about education, right? It's my world, my life, that I always think about that. Okay, I want to be a role model, and try my best to be a good role model, inspiration for young people, that they can, even if they're not trying to. It would be weird if they're trying to be me, but try to. I think that like the best way to describe like what I strive for, is that they're trying to, you know, uh, impress me or be my friend, and like they want to achieve achieve a certain amount of respect with me, if that makes sense. But in terms of achieving, or attaining a certain goal without a role model, I think that's such an interesting question, because I think it requires a really special person to be able to even come up with that idea of trying to achieve something without the prior idea themselves.
Right.
Like, how do you actually think of? For me, like again, how would I have known that I was going to be a teacher without that first grade teacher? And like I found my true calling, but how would I have known that without that really special Mrs. Mackenzie? Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah, but maybe it's like, I don't know. Maybe there are some unique times where people can do things that they've never seen done before. But for the most part, it's like baby steps where you're like, maybe you didn't see a male teacher, but you saw a woman teacher and you somehow identified with her as a human, and you thought, I want to do that, despite the fact that I'm a man and she's a woman, or a boy and she's a woman.
yeah, I think
And
for
you can
sure.
make that jump. Like, you just have to make like a little leap. You didn't
Yeah.
like, yeah.
I think for sure it's not. Inspiration is not defined by gender.
Yeah, for sure.
We've been talking a lot about, or I've been talking a lot about gender and how it affects me. But I think, like, yeah, in terms of inspiration is definitely not defined by gender. Inspiration is just inspiration, and it comes in all forms and shapes and sizes and gender, and inspiration is just that. You feel inspired and motivated to achieve your goal.
Yeah, with maybe a little hint of like,
yeah,
relating to that person.
Yeah.
Thinking I could do that as well.
yeah, like for sure. There's a person in your life that maybe initiates that inspiration, or that that really cool idea. But I think that the the idea itself is not related to anything but that actual concept. Whatever it is, you could be inspired to do write fantastic poetry. You could be inspired to write columns in a newspaper, or you can be inspired to write symphonies. Whatever it is, that could be inspired by X person, but your actual inspiration and the, what do you call it? Not the subject, but
Yeah, maybe.
the product.
Okay,
The product
okay.
that you're getting from that inspiration is separate from the inspiration. It is the product that you're actually getting.
Yeah.
And it is the product of your mind, and it's the product of your own creativity. And even if it's not a creative subject, it could be something completely uncreative that you're inspired to do. It could be I don't know, what's something uncreative? Mathematics.
Yeah.
You could be doing spreadsheets for a company, but if you're inspired to do that for whatever reason, and it's hard for me to relate to that, but if you're inspired to really just, that is your inspiration, I'm going to do spreadsheets for this company, but that's truly what you're passionate about, then that's a really cool thing. And you can then, it's hard for me to then like add a twist, but that's your inspiration. You're going to do that really passionately, and you've done it, and you feel fulfilled, which is, I mean, for me, that's the beauty. You feel fulfilled in whatever you do.
Yeah, awesome. Maybe I'll jump to ask you one other side question. This podcast is always going in a direction of like so far we're talking a lot about like nationalities, and in a way that's kind of like surface level, like identification stuff for me. But I still find it interesting. I think some of our listeners are quite interested in like, yeah, nationalities and travel, because I probably met them traveling and so on. Because you have this experience of kind of being half American, half Australian. And do you have anything to say about like how people perceive you and how that affected you, and how you perceive yourself with that? Or
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole podcast on that separately, but I think you, as I don't know if your listeners are aware, but also moving to Australia soon, the Australians are a little bit biased towards Americans. So obviously me not sounding American, but then once people find out, there can be a little bit of bias, and Australians like to think they are much more racist than they actually are, and saying that, meaning that they think they really hate Americans. They've got some grudge towards Americans in their mind, but then they meet a person and they actually like that person, and it's fine. So then me, not presenting American almost at all, being raised in Australia, and then they find it out, and all their theories are proven wrong. It's almost jarring for them.
yeah, I get you.
Yeah. So I think being half American, half Australian, it's an interesting combination, because then you get the opposite here too, where you come to America and you have very American California attitudes, but I don't sound and present like it. So people are almost jarred by the way that I do think, and even though I don't sound like it, the way that my ideas and thoughts come across is actually like a Californian, even though it does. Again, it's jarring to people because it's not what they expect it to sound like almost.
Yeah.
It's very sound based almost, I think.
You mean because of your accent?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the most surface level thing, and people make their judgments immediately.
Yeah.
I wonder if, do you think it benefits people in general to surprise people or to fit in a certain box? Because people are always like, let's say, yeah, like benefits in the sense of like, do people want to be your friend more? Do people want to date you more? Like if you fit a certain role that they've already created, or if you are a unique person, you show you like your humanity when you surprise them, you know?
I think in Australia, it's super interesting actually, because I think in Australia it was more in terms of I surprise people in the humanity sense of, oh, you present like this, but you're actually this. But then here, you think in terms of, oh, I present myself as a Australian young man who sounds and looks Australian, but then they find out, oh, you're American by birth, and like there's a story behind that. So it really depends on the context, but then again, so for me personally, there is that context base, but then you look at the people perceiving that context base, and it again depends on where they're looking at it from. Are they looking at it from the lens of a young American, or are they looking at it from a young Australian person?
Yeah, I think you said it well, that there's not going to be one overarching answer for any question like this, but that it depends on them.
Yeah.
But definitely something interesting to think about, and
Absolutely.
yeah, like all the episodes, but this one in particular, I think we have a lot now to think about, and so yeah, let's wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Sam, for taking the time.
Welcome.
This was super awesome. We're wrapping up at 3 a.m. on in the new year, and,
2023.
Yeah, 2023.
How
Happy
exciting.
New Year, everyone. You're gonna probably listen to this much later, but yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Awesome.